Have you ever been told to avoid tomatoes because you have kidney disease? Maybe your doctor mentioned potassium. Or maybe you saw a terrifying headline online. Top 10 foods that destroy your kidneys. Well, here's the truth. Tomatoes are one of the most misunderstood foods when it comes to kidney health. Are they dangerous? Or are they unfairly demonized? In this video, we're going to uncover the real science behind tomatoes and kidney disease. You'll learn how much potassium is really in a tomato, who should be cautious, and who shouldn't worry at all. Smart, kidney-friendly ways to still enjoy your favorite pasta, salad, or soup, without fear, confusion, or guilt. Because your diet shouldn't feel like punishment, it should feel empowering. Tomatoes often sit in a nutritional gray area for people with kidney issues. Some say they're dangerous, others say they're harmless. So, what's the real story? The main concern surrounding tomatoes and kidney health lies in their potassium content, not in anything inherently toxic within the fruit. Tomatoes are, in fact, quite nutrient-dense. They're packed with vitamin C, lycopene, a powerful antioxidant, folate, and yes, potassium. This last nutrient is where the controversy begins. Potassium is a double-edged sword for people with chronic kidney disease, CKD. In the general population, potassium helps regulate nerve function, muscle contractions, and fluid balance. However, for individuals with impaired kidney function, excess potassium may accumulate in the blood, potentially leading to a condition called hyperkalemia, which can be life-threatening if left unmanaged. But does this mean tomatoes are bad for everyone with kidney issues? Absolutely not. This blanket belief is a harmful oversimplification. As Michelle Crosmer, a renal dietitian, explains, tomatoes are not inherently dangerous. The problem lies in the portion size and individual patient context. In fact, scientific literature agrees. A 2020 review published in Nutrients emphasized that dietary potassium should not be universally restricted for all CKD patients. The authors pointed out that personalized dietary interventions based on lab values and clinical symptoms are more effective and healthier than general restrictions, which often reduce intake of fiber-rich fruits and vegetables unnecessarily. This is crucial because low potassium intake can lead to dietary fiber deficiencies, negatively impacting gut health and increasing the risk of constipation, another risk factor for potassium retention in CKD patients. So the first takeaway is this: tomatoes are not the enemy. The real issue is context, and that's what we'll dive into throughout this video. To truly understand why tomatoes, and other potassium-containing foods, get such a bad rap in kidney health, we first need to understand how potassium is regulated in the body and what happens when kidney function declines. Potassium is an essential mineral and electrolyte. It's involved in nerve transmission, muscle contraction, including your heart, and fluid balance. Under normal conditions, the kidneys play a critical role in maintaining the right balance by filtering out excess potassium through urine. But what happens when those kidneys aren't working at full capacity? As chronic kidney disease, CKD, progresses, particularly in stages 4 and 5, the kidneys lose their ability to effectively remove potassium from the blood. This can result in a dangerous condition known as hyperkalemia, high blood potassium, which can lead to symptoms like irregular heartbeat or arrhythmia, muscle weakness, fatigue, numbness and tingling. In severe cases, cardiac arrest. However, here's where things get interesting and less widely known. Our bodies have adaptive mechanisms to deal with reduced kidney function. One such adaptation is the increased elimination of potassium through the intestines, particularly the colon. This means that if someone with CKD is having regular bowel movements, they may still be able to maintain stable potassium levels, even with moderately high dietary potassium. Backhand index pointing right. A 2019 study in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology highlighted that intestinal potassium excretion increases as kidney function declines, acting as a compensatory mechanism. Therefore, managing constipation becomes a key strategy in keeping potassium in balance for those with advanced kidney disease. Moreover, not all CKD patients have high potassium levels. Some might even have low potassium, especially those on certain diuretics or dialysis, and actually need to increase potassium intake to avoid symptoms like muscle cramps or weakness. In short, potassium restriction is not a universal rule. It's about personalization, lab tests, and medical guidance. Now that we understand the importance of potassium regulation and its relationship to kidney function, let's talk specifically about how much potassium is actually in tomatoes, because not all tomato products are created equal. Let's start with the raw fruit itself. Here are some typical potassium amounts for common serving sizes of fresh tomatoes. 1 medium raw tomato, 292 mg of potassium. Half a cup chopped raw tomatoes, 211 to 220 mg. 6 cherry tomatoes, 225 mg. 12 grape tomatoes, 213 mg. 2 medium slices of tomato, 95 mg. Notice anything? These are all moderate to low potassium amounts. In fact, 2 slices of tomato, often used in a sandwich, are considered low potassium, which is typically defined as under 200 mg per serving. Now compare that with processed tomato products, and you'll see a dramatic difference. Half a cup canned crushed tomatoes, 400 to 550 mg. Half a cup tomato puree or sauce, 450 to 530 mg. 1 tablespoon tomato paste, 162 mg. It's clear that processing concentrates the potassium. This happens because water is removed, making the product denser and thus higher in nutrients, including potassium-who per gram. That's why when someone says, tomatoes are high in potassium, the right follow-up question should be, what kind of tomatoes? And how much are you eating? Let's put this into a real-world scenario. Imagine a person with stage 3 CKD wants to enjoy spaghetti. Instead of using a full cup of tomato sauce, which might contain over 800 milligrams of potassium, they could use just 2 tablespoons of tomato paste mixed with herbs, olive oil, and garlic for flavor. That's only around 324 milligrams of potassium. Better yet, they could swap half the sauce for roasted red peppers, which are naturally lower in potassium. Or let's say someone loves salads. A few cherry tomatoes, maybe 5 or 6, will barely push potassium past 200 milligrams, well within range for most low-potassium diets. The point here is that portion size is everything. With a bit of planning and flexibility, even high-potassium foods like tomatoes can be included in a kidney-friendly diet. When it comes to kidney health, blanket dietary rules don't work. Especially when it comes to potassium, each person's needs are different based on their stage of kidney disease, lab results, medications, and even digestive health. So who really needs to be careful with tomatoes? White heavy checkmark group 1, people with hyperkalemia, high blood potassium. This is the group that needs to be the most cautious. Hyperkalemia can develop when potassium builds up in the blood due to poor kidney filtration, use of potassium-retaining medications, constipation or poor gut motility. People with chronic hyperkalemia should work closely with a renal dietitian to identify and manage all high-potassium foods, including tomatoes. White heavy checkmark group 2, patients in stage 4 or 5 CKD or on dialysis. As kidney function declines, especially eGFR less than 30, potassium excretion becomes less efficient. Many dialysis patients are advised to limit potassium. However, this is not universal. Some people on dialysis actually experience hypokalemia, low blood potassium, especially if they're on potassium-wasting medications. Right arrow key point, even in advanced kidney disease, some people need more potassium, not less. White heavy checkmark group 3, individuals taking certain medications. Some medications can raise potassium levels, including ACE inhibitors, e.g., lisinopril, ARBs, e.g., losartan, potassium-sparing diuretics, e.g., spironolactone. NSAIDs. If you're taking these meds and have a history of elevated potassium, it may be smart to limit high-potassium foods, including tomato products. Now, let's talk about who doesn't need to avoid tomatoes. Crossmark people with early-stage kidney disease, stage 1 or 2, with normal potassium levels. These individuals often have near-normal kidney function and can still handle potassium very well. Unnecessarily cutting out healthy foods like tomatoes could mean reduced fiber intake, bad for gut and heart health. Reduced antioxidant intake, like lycopene. Increased risk of nutrient deficiencies. Crossmark people who are constipated but don't have high potassium. If constipation is addressed properly, through hydration, fiber, and physical activity, it can actually support healthy potassium elimination. Crossmark people afraid of potassium because of kidney diet articles online. There's a lot of fear-based misinformation out there. Many people are told to fear potassium without checking lab values or consulting a registered dietitian. This often leads to unnecessary food restriction, which does more harm than good. Speech balloon. A real-life example. A patient with stage 2 CKD once asked Michelle Crosmer if they had to give up their favorite tomato-based soup. Their potassium levels were normal, and their labs looked great. In that case, the answer was, no, enjoy it, just in moderation. Let's say you love tomatoes but you're managing chronic kidney disease or have been told to watch your potassium. The good news? You don't need to give them up completely. You just need to be smart about how you include them in your diet. Here are practical, evidence-based strategies to help you safely enjoy tomatoes, even if you're watching your potassium intake. Spoon 1. Practice portion control. This is the single most important strategy. Instead of eliminating tomatoes, simply scale down the amount. For example, use 2 slices of tomato in your sandwich, only 95 mg potassium. Add a small handful of cherry tomatoes, 4 to 5 pieces, 150-180 mg, into a salad. Mix 1 tablespoon of tomato paste into a soup or stew instead of using half a cup of sauce. Even in low-potassium diets, 2,000 to 3,000 mg/day, these small portions are manageable. Think of tomatoes as a flavor accent, not a main ingredient. Tomato 2. Choose tomato forms with lower potassium. Different types of tomato products have vastly different potassium levels. Fresh cherry, grape, or sliced tomatoes tend to be lower. Canned, pureed, or crushed tomatoes are much higher in potassium. Instead of pouring in half a cup of tomato sauce, 400-500 plus mg potassium, try this. Mix 1 to 2 tablespoons of tomato paste with olive oil, garlic, and herbs for a quick sauce. Or blend roasted red peppers with garlic and onion for a tomato-free alternative sauce. This helps reduce potassium while still giving you the tangy richness of tomato-based flavor. Fire 3. Use cooking techniques to reduce potassium. Potassium is water-soluble, meaning some of it leaches out when food is cooked in water. Try this trick. Boil or blanch fresh tomatoes, drain the liquid, and then use the solids in your dish. You can also cook tomatoes and discard the cooking water, especially if you're making sauces or soups. This reduces the potassium content significantly, up to 30% in some cases according to a study published in Food Chemistry. Just don't use the drained water in the meal, as it contains the leached potassium. 4. Try tomato substitutes in recipes. Sometimes, you can replace or reduce tomato in recipes without sacrificing taste. Great alternatives include roasted red peppers, rich, slightly sweet, and low in potassium. Butternut squash puree, great base for creamy sauces. Carrot and onion mix, naturally sweet and aromatic. Herbs like oregano, basil, thyme, and a squeeze of lemon juice to boost acidity without using tomato. Michelle Crosmer even suggests a homemade roasted veggie pasta sauce on her website using a blend of low-potassium vegetables. It's flavorful, kidney-friendly, and a perfect tomato alternative. Fork and knife with plate 5. Spread it out over the day. Instead of having a large tomato-based meal in one sitting, try spreading small amounts throughout your day. A few cherry tomatoes at lunch. A tablespoon of tomato paste in soup at dinner. A couple slices of tomato in your breakfast sandwich. This way, you're not overwhelming your kidneys with a large potassium load at once. Speech balloon personal tip from dietitians: it's not just what you eat, it's how frequently and what you eat it with. Combining tomatoes with high-fiber foods like leafy greens or whole grains can also support better potassium management by promoting regular bowel movements, an often overlooked tool in potassium control. When you start looking up diet advice for chronic kidney disease, CKD, it doesn't take long before you're bombarded with potassium warnings. Tomatoes, bananas, oranges, all get demonized. But the truth is, much of this advice is overly simplistic or outdated. Let's break down the two biggest myths about potassium and kidney health, and reveal what the science and real-world practice actually say. Crossmark myth number 1: all people with kidney disease need to avoid potassium. This is simply not true. Fact: potassium restriction is only necessary if your blood potassium levels are consistently high. Many people with CKD, especially those in early stages, 1 to 3, do not experience hyperkalemia and therefore do not need to avoid potassium-rich foods. In fact, unnecessarily restricting potassium can cause low fiber intake, since fruits and vegetables are natural potassium sources. Constipation, which ironically worsens potassium retention. Higher blood pressure, because many potassium-rich foods help lower sodium retention and balance blood pressure. Increased inflammation, due to lack of antioxidants like lycopene from tomatoes. Backhand index pointing right. A 2021 article in Kidney 360 emphasized that many CKD patients benefit from a plant-based diet, which naturally contains more potassium. The key is not elimination, but smart balancing. Crossmark myth number 2: a low potassium diet means zero potassium. Also false. Fact: even people on a low potassium diet still need 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of potassium per day. That's a lot more than zero, and it leaves room for moderate amounts of potassium-rich foods like tomatoes, bananas, sweet potatoes, and beans in small, planned portions. The goal of a low potassium diet isn't to remove potassium completely. It's to prevent dangerously high potassium levels. Spread intake evenly throughout the day. Choose lower potassium alternatives where needed. Pay attention to lab results and symptoms, not fear-based food lists. Let's look at this practically. If your potassium limit is 2,500 milligrams per day, and a few cherry tomatoes give you 150 milligrams, you're only using 6% of your daily allowance. That's more than reasonable, especially if the rest of your diet is well-balanced. Speech balloon real story. A patient with stage 3B CKD came to a renal dietitian terrified after reading online that bananas and tomatoes will kill your kidneys. But their potassium levels were perfectly normal, and their diet was low in fruits and vegetables. Over time, their dietitian slowly reintroduced small portions of tomatoes and even 1/2 a banana a few times a week. Not only did the patient's labs stay stable, their energy, bowel movements, and mood improved. Fear doesn't lead to healing, knowledge does. So, after all the fear-mongering, the blog articles, the kidney killer food lists, what's the real answer? Yes, you can eat tomatoes, even if you have kidney disease. But like all things in medical nutrition, the key is individualization, not restriction. Tomatoes are not toxic. They are not off-limits. In fact, they are a nutrient-rich food that provides lycopene, a powerful antioxidant linked to reduced inflammation and better heart health. Vitamin C, supporting immunity and collagen production. Folate, critical for DNA synthesis and cell repair. And yes, potassium, which is essential for nerve and muscle function. Instead of labeling tomatoes as bad, the more accurate approach is to ask: what is your current blood potassium level? What stage of CKD are you in? What medications are you on? Are you experiencing constipation or other gut health issues? How is the rest of your diet balanced? From there, you and your healthcare team can customize a plan that might include small portions of tomatoes in sandwiches, salads, or soups. Tomato paste instead of full cans of sauce. Tomato-free alternatives when needed. Smart cooking strategies that lower potassium content. Light bulb, as Michelle Crosmer wisely said. No one needs to completely avoid tomatoes. It all comes down to the portion, the preparation, and your personal potassium needs. Counterclockwise arrows button. Let's shift the mindset. Instead of asking, should I cut this out of my life forever? Let's ask, how can I enjoy this food safely in a way that supports my health? That's how we reclaim joy in eating while still honoring the needs of our kidneys. So, can you eat tomatoes if you have kidney disease? Yes, if you eat them the right way. Let's stop fearing foods based on outdated advice. Let's stop treating kidney health like a prison sentence. And let's start focusing on what really matters. Your labs, your stage of disease, your digestion, your whole body, not just a single mineral. Tomatoes aren't the enemy. Misinformation is. Speech balloon. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more kidney-friendly food breakdowns, so you can eat with confidence and live with clarity. This is Eat for Your Kidneys, and I'm Michelle Crosmer, renal dietitian. See you next time, and yes, go enjoy that tomato salad, tomato winking face.